Civil liberties and protest, a theme we'll be following through the hour today as we continue to look at events in the U.S. this week. We begin with a perspective from outside the U.S. As the UN Special Rapporteur, Agnès Callamard has been a leading proponent for civil liberties and human rights. She led the definitive investigation into the killing of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Callamard joins us now from outside Avignon, France. Madame Callamard, civil rights groups are now suing the Trump administration for violating the constitutional rights of demonstrators. You've been watching events on the streets of the U.S. this week from France. Are you seeing violations of international law?
Oh, yes, I have, at least on the basis of the videos that I have watched and the reporting that I have read. There appears to be repeated violations of international law, in particular of two principles that should guide the use of force by police in terms of handling protest: necessity and proportionality. I have seen misuse of so-called less lethal weapons, from rubber bullets to batons to tear gas. I have seen the use of less lethal techniques, which have become very harmful, if not lethal, in at least the case of Mr. Floyd. So yes, unfortunately, at the moment, based on what we can watch on our screen and what we can read on our newspaper, there is a pattern of violations committed by police force in handling the protest.
So what or who are the authorities internationally, and what are they thinking about how to respond to what's happening in the U.S.?
First of all, in the U.S. and globally, I will say there is an increasing awareness within the international community, the human rights community, and also the police community, that the so-called less lethal weapons are no panacea. There is a reasonable factor as to why we need them, because they give police a range of options in terms of handling difficult situations, and that is something that is welcomed. We certainly do not want the police to have only recourse to a firearm when confronted with a difficult situation. So the range of options that those less lethal weapons constitute is welcome. But in order to meet their purposes, which is to police in an effective and safe fashion, they have to be used properly. And what we are seeing is the repeated misuse, the absence of proper guidelines and regulations, legal frameworks which are enshrining excessive use of force and impunity. That is particularly the case in the US because of the qualified immunity doctrine, which is applied to police officers. This is why I and others have called for an end of that doctrine. That will be a first essential step towards addressing the systemic impunity that is attached to excessive use of force. The second is proper regulations regarding those less lethal weapons, and the third is proper training attached to those less lethal weapons.
Agnès Callamard, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Agnès Callamard is the UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial, summary, or arbitrary executions.